Hello friends, welcome back to another video. Today I have something totally different for you guys, and that's a chat with a fellow writer on writing outside of your gender. This is a topic I see amongst so many writers, and I think it's a really interesting and important topic to cover. So joining me is writer JM Celi, who, like myself, has an MC outside of their own gender. He's working on his debut novel, which I had the opportunity to read as a critique partner, and let me tell you, it's fantastic. So I'll go ahead and let him introduce himself, his book, and Cynthia. So thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me. My name is JM Celi. My novel is called The Flower in Hell, and my novel is about a half succubus who is desperately trying to escape hell. She's half human, so she has the capacity to love and feel compassion and sympathy for all the suffering people and even some of the demons and devils that she sees in hell. So she's really a stranger in a strange land, and she's trying desperately to get to the mortal world where she can live among humans and people that care like she does.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so we have compiled some questions that either we're really curious about how the other person handles this, or just questions that have been asked of us by other people about our characters. So I have put everything into a hat, and we're going to be using the trusty mariner's hat today. So let's get in here. And before we do dive in, I just want to point out that this video is being made by two cisgendered individuals speaking about cisgendered main characters. So just to clarify there. Okay, so question number one. All right, so we talked about this a little bit, but tell us about your MC and how their gender differs from your own in your novel.
Well, I am a male author, and my main character, Cynthia, is female.
I am a female writer writing a male MC named Sam. Sam is a 19-year-old Black man living in 1905, and he's madly in love with a white woman named Annabelle. Sam is a farmer, though his dream is to be a poet. His biggest attributes would be his loyalty, his mind, and his morals. And his downfalls are definitely believing that the world is black and white when in actuality it's gray. All right, question number two. What made you decide to write outside of your gender?
Oh, wow. Well, Cynthia is actually a character that I created for Dungeons and Dragons many years ago. And I think that one of the most compelling things when it comes to putting her into a novel is that too often, I think, we see a lot of female lead characters that are strong, but suddenly need sort of the male friend or the love interest to kind of swoop in and save the day. Geez, even in the Wonder Woman movie, I'm like, what's up with all these dudes running around? You know, like this is Wonder Woman, you know? And I just wanted to, they say, write what you want to read, right? So I wanted to see a novel where there was a strong female character, capable, independent, someone that could just achieve these things that she wanted on her own. I mean, you know, not without obstacles and struggles, but she gets through them on her own.
I love that. Female characters that are real women. I feel like we don't get to see that a lot, so. Yeah. For me, I didn't really anticipate writing a male MC. I actually started off in Annabelle's POV, and it was all going to be Annabelle's story. But as I was writing, Sam's story is more important. So he kind of told me, he was like, no, like I'm in the spotlight here. I need to be the MC. And so I really had to, I was kind of fighting it for a little while. And I was like, okay, this is definitely your story. I had to do, you know, a lot of research on everything. And I was like, okay, I think I can do this. Yeah, it wasn't really a decision. I was just kind of, it unveiled itself as I was writing.
Yep.
Okay, next question. What was the biggest challenge writing outside of your gender?
Oh, I think for me, I kept I kept second guessing myself in the early drafts. Like I had to ask myself, is she not feminine enough, or should I make her more feminine, or something like that? And in the end, I thought that I'm gonna leverage a sensitivity reader. I have critique partners. I definitely wanted to have women who are critique partners and beta readers. And I thought to myself, she's a person. Let's just focus on her as a person and not worry about anything in the back of my head going, what are the expectations of some reader out there somewhere? I don't care. I'm going to write this character the way I see her, as strong and capable. And, to me, that's feminine.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I had kind of a similar journey, a lot of self-doubt, like, am I doing the right thing here? So that was definitely a challenge to overcome. And I would also say just how Sam processes information completely differently than how I would. He's definitely like a natural protector. He's like this huge built guy. And so he's got his physical strength as well as like the protectiveness. And I'm like, I could never make decisions through that filter. So just a lot of things about who Sam is where I had to think, okay, how would this sort of person go into this situation or make a decision? I think that was definitely the biggest challenge. So I'm not sure it was really like a gender thing, just more things I couldn't really relate to.
No, that's definitely relatable, because there are, of course, challenges writing this character that weren't related to gender. Of course, she lives in hell and she's surrounded by all this violence and terribleness and suffering. And, that's not me. I've had a pretty good life. But I had to put myself in a place where someone was surrounded by misery and just trying to get through it all. And being in that headspace was very foreign to me. And I know people say write what you know, but I don't know. I mean, sometimes you got to step outside of yourself and make stuff up or figure stuff out or research, and I needed to really go to another place to get into Cynthia's head and figure out what she'd do and what she'd say and then how she'd act.
Mm-hmm. As long as that place was not hell, please.
Yes. No, get out of there.
Next question. How much would your story change if your MC's gender was something else?
Well, the thing about Cynthia is that she's half succubus, and that's for the type of devil that she is. There, at least in my setting, all succubi are female. So I suppose I could have made her a half incubus or whatever, but I just feel like it wouldn't have the same punch to it. I wanted, like I said, I wanted to write the story of a strong female because it was something that I think, Hollywood and all these, I can name a number of books. They get us so close and then they just kind of miss the mark. And if I made her a male and a half incubus or whatever, I think it would have felt like white noise to me. I would have felt like my heart wouldn't have been in it as much. I wouldn't have been as invested in the character because it wasn't the story that I wanted to write.
Yes. So my story being set in 1905, I think if Sam had been a woman, it would have a really big impact. Black men and Black women were not always treated the same, especially when they were in interracial relationships. So, I haven't done a ton of research on that aspect because Sam is not a woman, but I would imagine that there would be a lot of different aspects if he was to be a woman. There's also a lot of physically laborious challenges that Sam has to go through. His body just going through so much or having to physically get through certain tasks. And I'm not saying, women aren't strong, but a 6'4", hugely built man is definitely going to have easier time getting through some physical challenges than say, some 5'5" slender woman. Like that's just how it is. So yeah, I think it would be a lot different if he was a woman in my story.
And Annabelle too, like what would happen to her?
Exactly. Yeah, Annabelle would have to be a man. Like I would have to change
that's
her.
what I was getting at. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, she that would have been like a huge task to not only do the interracial couple, but then like a lesbian couple. That would, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine the task of doing that.
Just get your sensitivity readers lined up in a row.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that was a little too ambitious for what I was going for in this novel. There's a lot of heavy themes, and I do have, LGBT in my story, but it didn't need to also be woven in with the other themes of my novel. So,
right.
What surprised you the most about writing outside of your gender?
Well, I guess that it wasn't this daunting thing. An earlier question you asked, what was the most challenging thing, and I worried about all these expectations or whatever I should have had. And once I kind of got into the zone and got into her mind, she just came to me. I mean, she's, I know her, I figured her out, and then it became very easy to kind of get in her head and speak in her voice and know what she was going to do and say and how she's going to act.
Totally agree with you. Yeah, I had been having this struggle with Sam for a while where I was like, who are you? What are you doing? And I was like, okay, I need to like get in Sam's head and figure this out. I need to know everything about him. And once you figure it out, yeah, I agree. It's not as big of a challenge as you think it might be. I think my biggest surprise was how different I could portray Sam than you would see in popular media. And then the amount of love he actually gets for that, like from my critique partners and beta readers, that he's actually a well-rounded person and he doesn't just make decisions on, the size of his arms. And he is such a large character. And I feel like there's this stereotype, like the stereotypical huge character who's just like super dumb. Like if you're going to be the big guy, you have no brains. And so he actually has to use his brains. His physical strength doesn't really come into play that often. It's usually his brains. And just making decisions, the way he treats the people around him is a lot different than what you might see on TV or in different books. And people love that.
Yeah, Sam's great.
Thank you. Right. Did any of your CPs or betas remark on your depiction of your MC's gender?
No, they didn't. And I don't know if that's a good sign or not, but
I think it is.
No news is good news, I guess, right? Certainly no one called me out on anything, but nobody like said, "Oh, you really nailed, the lady," whatever. But no one actually called out anything or pointed to anything specifically about her gender.
All right. Well, someone who's read your book, she's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, you did a really good job. At no point did I ever feel like, oh, a man wrote this character,
Oh, good. I was definitely shooting for that, because there's a lot of and I know we've both probably read books like this, where you just know that a man wrote this female character, and there's eye-rolling moments, and just there's a whole subreddit on Reddit dedicated to r/men writing women that it's awful, and it's just and I just didn't want to be one of those guys. So I tried to be very aware and objective and very open to any feedback I got. I just wanted to do it right.
That's awesome. Yeah, being open to feedback is really, really important in this process. you'll come across people, you'll say something and they will jump down your throat and you're like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. So I did not get a lot of reviewers remarking on Sam's gender. Specifically, there were a lot of things that they liked about his character. A few people did remark just that they liked his overall character, but I don't think anyone was like, this is not how men are, you know? Yeah, so a lot of it was just like my husband. I was like, is this right? Is this okay? And so I did make a lot of big changes based on what he said. So I think that might have helped, just like all the upfront prep of it. Yeah.
I once heard that Stephen King, when he was writing Carrie, which is, you know, his breakout novel, of course, and his, you know, his main character was female. So he was writing outside his gender, and he would take early drafts of it and show them to his wife. And, you know, sometimes she'd be like, girls don't talk like that. You know, and then he'd go back and he'd change it and then show her again, and until she kind of signed off on it. And I don't know if he used beta readers or critique partners, you know, back in those days, but I always thought that was a neat story that he kind of like went to his wife and he's like, you know, and she's like, no.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I definitely had instances of that where my husband was like just a romantic setting. He'd be like, yeah, I would be thinking the opposite of this in this moment. And I was like, okay, that's really helpful to know where a man would be coming from and then build off that rather than like where a woman might think something is. So that was really helpful to have his input on that.
Yep.
Next question. Going off this question, what resources or support did you seek out in writing your MC?
You know, again, this is not something that pertained to her gender when it came to researching stuff for Cynthia. The stuff I did research in regards to her character had to do with folklore around succubi themselves, and, you know, old myths that go back, you know, through Europe and things like that. And, you know, the word cambion actually means half succubus, and I use that in my novel to describe, you know, what she is. So I did a fair amount of research on stuff like that, but nothing in particular to her gender.
Okay, so aside from the numerous male CPs and betas that I had, and asking my husband like all the questions, I would go like line by line. I'm like, is this right? Is this right? But I did a lot of research with different books. So here's a few of them. So since there is a huge romance portion of my novel, this book is insanely helpful. The 5 love languages, because Sam's love languages are not mine and they're not my husband's. So I was like, okay, how do we show love from him to someone who also doesn't share my love language? So that was really interesting.
It's like acts of service and gift giving, and I'm not gonna remember all 5, but yeah. That's a wonderful way to dig into a romance.
Yeah,
to figure someone out. That's awesome.
Absolutely, yeah. And then some other books that are really helpful. So there's 2 of them. So there's this one called For Women Only, and then they also have the For Men Only. So this is basically just about relationships. So women will read this. It's about men and how like men's brains work and why they are different than women, like why they do the things that they do, rather than just, oh, men are totally different. Like, like we know they're from different planets, but like why?
Men are from Mars, women are from Venus.
Yeah. So this book, and then this one is For Men about women. So helpful for me. I found that a lot of what the books were saying was exactly what my husband was saying also. So those are really good resources. Definitely, especially if you have like a romance in yours. I believe they're just written like men and women to men relationships. But at least it's a start, you know?
Yeah. Men like to fix things, and women just kind of want to just be heard. Not just, but, you know, they want you to listen to them. Absolutely. And sometimes they don't want you to fix it. They just want you to listen. And men want to go, I'll take care of it. And they're like, no.
Yep, exactly.
Just let me vent at you for a little while, you know, type of a thing. And that little bit I thought was a little insightful, because it kind of reminded me of me and my wife, where I'm like, I'll jump on this and help you. And she's like, no, I don't need you to do that.
Yeah.
There are times when Cynthia wants to kind of vent and talk to people about stuff, and here she is kind of spilling her heart out to these fiends, these demons and devils and stuff who don't care, you know. Yeah. And she's like, oh, you won't believe this, and then my mother, you know, and they're like, you know, and she knows they don't care, but the fact that they're just there and listening, it gives her a semblance of like, I'll just pretend that what I'm saying matters to you, and then that'll make me comfortable. But that was a little, I don't know, a little vehicle in which I tried to show her humanity through that piece, you know.
Absolutely, yeah. All right, next question. What did you think would be a challenge writing outside your gender, but actually was not?
I think the romance part of it was. And I don't want to give away too much about that, but just kind of like what you talked about with the 5 love languages and things like that, and just the differences inherently between men and women regarding that. As for me as a man writing as a woman, I felt like I was coming from this, you know, this place that I didn't know, you know, and, you know, I used my wife as inspiration, of course, which was so helpful. But ultimately it wasn't that much of a challenge, because, you know, people just want to be loved, you know, and love is love kind of a thing. And it didn't turn into this big, like, conundrum or mystery that I had to solve. It was just, you know, 2 people in love.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, I would definitely say that the romance I thought was going to be a challenge, but it actually was really helpful, I think, because I knew what women would want, you know. So I kind of used that to my advantage. Like, what would definitely make Sam like a swoon-worthy character in his romance? Like, what are the few things that he could do that aren't completely, you know, just making him not like how a man would handle a situation, but what could I do realistically that I think women would appreciate, specifically his love, Annabelle. But what could I do, or what could Sam do to please her or make her happy, or just show that he's a romantic sort of fellow? So I was like, okay, I need to take this. It's not a negative, it's a positive. I can totally do this. So it actually ended up being an asset. I think that he was a different gender for that than a hindrance like I thought it would be.
Oh, their relationship was very, very solid, you know, healthy and believable. And it was just something, it felt very honest.
Thank you. Yeah, that was definitely one of my goals, because you read so many books and I'm like, where are the solid couples, you know? Puppy!
My pug just busted in.
Yeah, so I felt like even when we would get something where it seemed like we would start with a solid couple, something stupid would happen. I'm like, y'all have been together for 25 years. Like, why is this what's, you know, breaking you up?
I know.
So I'm like, I want a couple that's not only stable in the beginning, but they know how to healthily work through problems, and then they come out the other side together and strong. So that was really why I wanted these 2. I was like, we're not playing with their relationship. Like, we already know they're going to end up together, and they're cute and in love. So I'm glad that came off.
honestly, that was refreshing for me. I mean, honestly, I don't read. That's romance isn't typically my genre, but I do love fantasy and historical fantasy, and I love personally that you didn't play with the stuff. I mean, there was so much great stuff going on in the book. The last thing you needed was to be like, let's mess with these two.
Break these two up for
yeah, you know. So good. I'm glad.
Thank you so much. All right, next up. I think we just have a few more. Did you leverage a sensitivity reader to weigh in on gender?
I did not, and that isn't to say that I won't, but as of right now, I have no plans to, and that's based on the feedback that I've gotten, or even haven't gotten. I'm not sure I'm writing anything germane to her gender. So she is female, but I'm not writing about the struggles that if I was writing maybe in a modern setting, and I'll just use an example, a single mom who's not getting paid the wage that her coworkers are getting made, some of the real issues and stuff like that, then I would definitely leverage a sensitivity trainer regarding gender. But with Cynthia living in hell, she is female, but the story isn't about her being female, and she isn't struggling with issues that pertain to her gender. So as of right now, I have no plans to use a sensitivity reader for that.
Absolutely, yeah. I think I have like the same answer for that. I do have a sensitivity reader. My manuscript is with them now, but it's not for gender. Obviously, my character is a Black man in 1905 in Charleston, South Carolina. So I had to have a sensitivity reader for that. And I also have LGBTQ characters. I have disabled characters. I have characters who have gone through trauma and have PTSD. So I definitely had to have a sensitivity reader. But like you said, my story is not about Sam being a man. And so I think that really is what makes the difference there. Absolutely.
Yep.
That one fell out, so that's the one. Is there a romantic arc in your story? And if so, what was it like writing a romance for another gender's perspective?
Yes. And I did kind of answer this before. So I thought it was going to be a challenge, and really it wasn't. It felt just as natural as anyone or any two people. So I kind of felt challenged going into it. And then once I kind of started putting words on a page, and it wasn't like I banged out like the whole arc was like a couple of paragraphs. These are like little scenes here through many chapters, right? Of course. But whenever I had to write content germane to, that relationship moving forward, after a while, I didn't feel intimidated by it. And it just felt very, very natural and very normal,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did talk about this a little earlier. Yeah, so besides everything that I already said, I think just focusing on like their love was the main point of it. Like not how they need to come to that love, but it's like, okay, there's love going on here, and how are we going to grow, and who's going to be adding this piece to it or this part. So I knew what Annabelle would be adding to their love. So it was like everything else. I'm like, okay, does this fit for a man to be adding this into their relationship? 3 more questions. Yes. Okay, so for supporting characters who are outside of your gender, Did writing them bring any different challenges than writing your MC? If so, what kinds?
So I definitely have other characters that are not. I only have one main character throughout my entire novel, so there's only one POV. But I do have other characters that are female. And again, this is such a broad thing. Like any character ought to be, I think, no one is defined by their gender. And the women in my book are ranging from, because it takes place in hell, so there are damned souls that are female, all the way through, demons and devils, and Cynthia's own mother, who is this powerful succubus. They're all very, very different, and they all have different motivations, and they care about different things, and they have different personalities, of course. But nowhere in that pie chart of things that add up to the sum of their being is necessarily gender weighing in on their personality. I'll just say,
Yeah.
So I didn't really run into challenges when it came to other female characters, because they kind of are their own people and had their own motivations and dispositions.
Exactly, yeah. I would say kind of the same thing. Like, the challenges that all the characters brought were not really just about their gender. Because like you said, like, they're not their gender, they're all of these different pieces of themselves put together. So one of my characters is like in his mid-40s. I'm like, how do I relate to that? I'm not even 30 yet, so how can I write someone in his mid-40s? I have a character who's like, I haven't put a specific age on it, but he's hundreds of years old. I'm like, I can't relate to that. Some of the characters have children. That's also something I can't relate to. So it's like the parent-child relationship is also a challenge, like figuring out how that works. Yeah, so I would say that there were a lot more challenges than just gender with these characters. What 3 pieces of advice would you give to someone writing outside their gender?
3 pieces. I would say, well, first I'd say relax. Don't look at it as this insurmountable thing. I'd say don't be shy about asking for feedback. And I don't necessarily mean something as formal as a critique partner or a beta reader who's going to sit with your entire manuscript, but turn to the whatever particular gender you're writing for, find representation and ask them and say, does this make sense? Am I doing it right? Don't be shy or don't hesitate and see if you can. And I'm not saying substitute them for a sensitivity reader either, but the sort of the Stephen King and his wife scenario, if you could leverage something similar to that, then definitely take advantage of your the people around you. And the third advice would probably be to definitely leverage sensitivity readers, particularly if you're writing content that is germane to gender. I don't happen to be, but if I was, believe me, I would be using a sensitivity reader, because that's something I would not want to butcher or get wrong, or anything like that.
Yeah. Perfect. So you may have stolen a couple of mine. Yeah, I definitely agree. You need to find a ton of readers, not just even for gender. I would say, for everything about your novel, different ages, and my MC is not my age. Like I said, I have characters who are in their 40s. Like, I can't make sure that everything is perfect. So get older people, get younger people, get people of different race and religion and background and everything. But definitely, yeah, that includes gender. And listen to feedback. It doesn't help you if you don't actually listen to it or if you're yelling at people.
Yeah.
Second, I would say if you don't feel like you know the character or you can relate to it, find one little thing. Like find one thing that you can relate to about your character and build from there. So for me, Sam is a Black man. He's a farmer in 1905 in a relationship with a woman. I'm like, okay, where do I relate to him?
Yep.
And Sam wants to be a poet and I'm a writer. So I was like, okay, this is something that I can understand about him. This is one piece of his personality. I know it. I know it totally and completely.
Yep.
And it doesn't have to match up exactly like that. It can just be, you know, my character is a mathematician and I'm really into science and, you know, so we're really into STEM. Like just find whatever you can to connect with your character and start building the branches from there. Yeah, I think my third piece would just be don't be scared to write outside your gender. Like there's definitely challenges and you have to put a lot of work and research and whatnot into it. But I don't think it's as scary as a lot of people make it out to be. Just write the character, you know, their gender will sometimes just reveal itself based on circumstances. You know, you don't have to say, okay, I'm writing a woman and then go from there. You can just say, okay, I need to write a character who has these attributes and they're going through these challenges. And, you know, if you're writing someone who goes to an all girls school, then, you know, you're probably writing a woman. So yeah, I wouldn't focus on it too hard besides, you know, just making sure they're a real relatable character. We're down to our last question.
Ooh.
Okay, this is the hardest question of all.
Oh.
Would you write an MC outside of your gender again?
Oh, of course. Yeah. In fact, my current project that I'm, you know, my debut novel that I'm working on right now is meant to be a series of 3 books. I don't have any more plans, not to say that there wouldn't be or couldn't be, but the next project that I kind of have down the line is going to take place modern day Earth, but the main character is going to be a siren of, you know, of Greek mythology. Fun. Yeah, and she's actually the daughter of one of the original 7 sirens that was stranded on the island, if you know the myth. But she's, you know, so there's going to be a lot of stuff that I'm going to need to really dig into. She's very old and she's a female living in the modern world, and there's lots of Greek mythology I need to, you know, research. And but yeah, I definitely would write another female main character. I plan to. I love strong female characters that don't need a guy coming in and, you know, saving the day for them. You know, when I see a book on a shelf and I read the book blurb in the back, you know, so-and-so kicks ass and takes names, great. And then I dig into the book and it's her boyfriend who's doing the ass kicking, then I'm like, oh man, come on, you know. Yep. So these are the books that I want to write, because that's what I want to read.
Yes, I would definitely write a male MC again. My novel is also the first of 3, and there might be more, you know, little novellas or whatever along the way. But yeah, Sam definitely in book 1 has a majority of the POV, and he's got a heavy amount in books 2 and 3. And I just feel like, you know, no MC you write is going to be yourself. Like, you shouldn't be inserting yourself into the novel.
Yeah.
So whatever MC you're writing, you're going to have to do a fair amount of research and talking to people and making sure things are okay anyway. So I don't think gender should really influence that very much. I mean, it might for some people, you know, r/men writing women, it might influence those people. But yeah, for me, like, I'm never gonna just throw someone on the page and not do the research and not do the work. So yeah, it doesn't create any more work for me, you know?
Yeah, your readers will see right through it.
Exactly, yeah. Even if I had, you know, a white woman as my MC, there's gonna be things about her I have absolutely no idea about. All right, so there are all of our questions. Thank you so much for joining me today. This was a lot of fun, and I think I definitely learned a lot. I hope everyone else learned a lot. Make sure to keep an eye out for JM Celi's novel, A Flower in Hell. I will link all of his information down below for you to follow his channel and follow his social media. As always, make sure to give this video a like and subscribe for more bookish and writing related videos. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next time. Bye.